notice has been posted. And hello, Cryptic. Welcome. That was fast. But, hello. I know I should be doing the spiel, but let people come in, filter in, and just sort of settle down. I'm fiddling around with the voice and mic part of it. I might be bumping up a little bit because I did listen to the last stream and it was kind of low. So we're gonna see how far up we get before it starts to get a little bit unbearable. But in the meantime, hello, hello. The usual spiel starts here. Hutzel, welcome. Yes, also, Lo-Fi Girl apparently has a Parisian stream, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's only about an hour, so it'll just be our first hour, and then I'll circle in, or just replay it. That's the great thing about these lo-fi streams. They have like enough variety that you can just replay it, and it's fine. But in any case, Cryptic says, I got a notification from YouTube and hopped in immediately. Excellent. Beautiful. Yeah, I had to pause for a little bit to tell Blue Sky where we are. But, speaking of, let me just make sure that everybody is a-okay. Ooh. People have... Excellent, excellent. People do see the notice. I did things correctly. I marketed. Remember, I'm a writer too. Watch your writing. Welcome, welcome. So yes, basically, we are starting our first sprint at 9 p.m. What you see on your screen, might as well start the spiel now, right? This is Night Writes. I am Jax, your host and fantasy writer. What you see on your screen, in fact, is one of my works in progress. It is a 90s AU of my usual fantasy. What Night Writes is, if this is your first time here, is it's an open chat. You can say whatever you'd like in the chat, and so long as it doesn't violate YouTube's TOS or get weird with other people, we're fine. Please don't violate the TOS, and please be excellent to each other. I mentioned that there are word sprints. There are word sprints. These are 20-minute spans of time in which you sit down and you basically do anything on a kind of project. It's only word sprints and name only. We've had a lot of people do a lot of different things. We've had people playing video games. We've had people doing art. It's all chill and all cool. At the end of the 20 minutes, we talk about our progress and then we shoot the shit for a little bit. We start at 9 p.m., which is about 25 minutes from now, just to let people filter in and settle in. We also let people just sort of mingle with each other and get into the vibe of writing, get to know each other, and have chats, catch up with each other. And I also know that a lot of writers tend to be introverts, so we also have a thing every night called the icebreaker. It's a writing-related question or a question that's related to your work in progress, whatever you'd like. Tonight's icebreaker is, have you ever created a fantasy race? So it's sort of like, have you ever created like something akin to elves or hobbits or anything like that? And just tell us about them. This might be a pretty thinly veiled excuse for me to talk about the Zizun, which are the bee people that I've created and that I've been kind of obsessed with lately. But feel free to put into the chat things that you have done in your own works in progress. Say hello. If you don't want to answer the icebreaker right away, feel free to drop in and tell us a little bit about yourself. That includes you, remember. Or what should I call you exactly? I don't really want to call you Anne Frank. I feel like that would be disrespectful, speaking as a Jewish person. But anything else, feel free to say hi, feel free to talk about yourself, feel free to tell us about your work in progress. What are you writing, for example? Cryptic says, I've put away my laundry before and probably will be again. I am very happy with the fact that you're being consistent about this. Consistency is an excellent thing to have at this time of need. It is so good for mental health, in my opinion. So, heck yeah, to the idea of you doing your laundry every Tuesday. That is better than I have been lately. Um, my laundry day is usually Thursday, but it's been like creeping outwards because depression. But in any case, Cryptic says, I've never done anything from scratch completely, but I've done quite a bit with the sun, moon, and void elves. Ooh, do tell us about these elves, especially the void elves, because those sound rad. Have you ever talked about the work in progress that those are related to? Because I feel like I'm trying to think about all the works in progress you've told me about, and I don't recall any specific one that might fit in with, but I might be wrong. Otherwise, I will definitely like fill the space with bee people. I don't know, fun fact, there are actually several different races that I've created for. Some are just classic fantasy races, the others are stuff that I made up myself, or this is the D&D-esque work in progress. Oh, right. You have one of those. I'm so sorry. I remember like the Reaper one and the Paranormal Investigator one. The one where all the main characters are dreamwalking and related to mythology. I completely forgot about the D&D one. Also, side point, I admire the fact that you have an entire list of works in progress that you've got going on. Like, I feel like every writer should, but I have like 2 ideas. Oops. But anyway. Cryptic says, I just haven't mentioned much about the culture building I've done for them, but the Void Elves are kind of like the Dark Elf equivalent, to be honest. It's totally fine. I have a million works in progress, lol. Totally a-okay. Also, I need, I would love to see a list, not gonna lie. Like, I must see into your brain and see all of these story ideas. Oh, that actually hit a nice spot. Like ASMR for your writing needs tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and others. For the next several hours, we will be just chilling out with music and the dulcet even tones of my voice, so that your brain may be itched as you write. I'm not gonna do this the entire time. I don't know, I'm just kind of like in a hilarious mood. But let's see. Anyway, you mentioned Dark Elves, which are pretty rad. Now I have to ask about the Sun and Moon Elves. I'm guessing that one of them might be kind of like either... Ooh, here we go. Elves are tied to the moons and suns of the world. I'm honestly a little inspired by how the Khajiit of Elder Scrolls work for the elves. I still need to play Elder Scrolls, but that's awesome. Baldur's Gate 2, come to think of it. Like, I have an entire list of games I need to get into. Oops. But, that is rad. Here I was thinking it was like WoW and their Blood Elves, which were originally like Sun Elves, essentially. So, the Void Elves in particular were banished underground ages ago and lost the connection to the celestial bodies and turned into something new. Oh, dang, that's awesome, actually. Like, not only cave elves, but also like feral elves. That's amazing. Yeah, why don't you talk about this work in progress all that often? It sounds rad as hell. I want to know what else is in here. Like, there are these feral elves, but like, what other races are going on in there? Like, are there gnomes? Are there dwarves? Are there D&D abominations? See, it's always so much fun to talk about these kinds of things because, like, it's world building inherently. Like, you're being forced to think about the different people that inhabit your world and where they came from, how they function. I've been having just so much fun talking about the Zizun on my timeline, not gonna lie, guys. And it's entirely because, like, I have the opportunity to just go off about who they are as a people. It's great. Cryptic says Sun Elves tend to have fiery or warm metallic skin tones and are quite adept with those sorts of magic. They're also typically very bold and passionate. I won't talk about it much because it's got some of the least progress, unfortunately. That's fair. Like, you gotta write what you're most interested in, and you have a lot of cool ideas for all the other works in progress that you've got going on, so I can wait. In other words, I can wait. Finger tense. Oakleaf says, hello, Oakleaf, welcome. You came just in time. We are starting our first sprint in 17 minutes. But in the meantime, we are talking about fantasy races. Cryptic was telling me about all kinds of elves that are going on in a D&D inspired world, like void elves and sun elves. Cryptic just got done talking about sun elves, so it's pretty awesome. I might be Oakley says, "Oh, have I ever created many fantasy races? Do tell." Cryptic says, "Because I'm trying to do much more solid world building, I'm not actually writing the story as much." That is also fair. I feel like D&D is very open to that, or it can lend itself to that pretty well. So you build up, like, it is what it is. It is a tabletop RPG world that is meant to be filled and colored in by the players who go through it. So, like, D&D inspired worlds have that kind of vibe to them for sure. Is very tempting to go off on world building when you work with those, in other words. So, no shame in that. Oakleaf says, hey, world building is part of the process. It counts. For sure. For sure. And honestly, like, eventually you end up with a story. Like, you hammer enough nails together, you know what I mean? Cryptic says the moon elves have cool tones both in normal colors and metallics. They're considered the more logical ones. In reality, the best way to put it is that the sun elves most typically fall into chaotic. Nice. There's more. Sun elves most typically fall into chaotic alignments, while moon elves tend to fall into the lawful type alignments. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And, like, how about void elves? Are they, like... I'd assume that they... just with the way you're describing it, it kind of sounds like they're chaotic, but, like, are they, like, good, evil? Where are they on the alignment chart? Oakleaf says, my last fantasy race was basically me putting Tolkien elves and classic folklore tropes about Fae into a jar and shaking. That's also a lot of fun. Yeah, I think I kind of did that the same thing with the Trigger, which are a cat people race, but it's sort of like take Mikote and take anime cat girls and then mash them together. But yeah, like, there's that. I could answer the rest, but like, there are basically 11 races in TNS. Never mind. Let me look at this. Oakley says they have some degree of song and nature and magic and the noble demeanor of Tolkien elves, but all the humans believe they're basically Fae and have scary stories about them. I love that. I kind of feel like Tolkien elves also have a lot of lore connected to them. So I love this, honestly. because they make it, they sound so ethereal, essentially. Oku says, like, don't follow the lights in the woods type stories. The MC follows the lights. Oh, I remember you mentioning that. And good times were had by all, and he was definitely not, or, I don't know why I say he, excuse me for a sec. Anyway, the MC was definitely not thrown into adventure and danger as soon as lights were followed. Am I right? Cryptic says the Void Elves have a much more varied sense of alignments because their ancestors were a mix of sun and moon elves before the banishment, and they're now just focused on survival in the underground. Actually, I do like that. Like, not one or the other, but like a mix of both, but also sort of like the entire idea that the dichotomy is kind of pointless, I want to say. Not pointless, but kind of like silly. Because elves are elves, so. And here are a byproduct of both elves and shenanigans. I do, in other words, I appreciate that for sure. Oakley says, oh yes, Tolkien and I were very much drawing from the same sources. Yes, you remember my boy. Cryptic says, always follow the strange lights if you're the protagonist, lol. That is right. Nothing bad ever happens if you do that. You should definitely follow the lights into the murky woods or the strange swamps full of distant crying, because that definitely is a good time. Oakley says, don't worry, he got to peg the elf prince, lol. As he should. Oakley says, Cryptic, following the lights is how you become the protagonist, or else how you become dead. LOL. Ooh, Void Elves, right? The Void Elves are an awesome idea. Cryptic says the Sun and Moon Elves are kind of two sides of the same coin in their kingdom. They do sound like they would balance each other out very well, because, like, if you're too lawful, you're kind of a stick in the mud, and it's difficult to think outside the box and progress, really. Whereas if you're too chaotic, you need to be reined in, otherwise chaos for the sake of chaos, blah 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 blah. So it's sort of like, it sounds like that they would balance each other very well, just having them. But one thing that would balance them even more is if they set aside their differences, as the Void Elves have figured out. I'm already shipping it, in other words. Oakley says, have you seen the Dragon Prince, Cryptic? The vibes of your elves are vibing with that. Cryptic says, two Sun Elf parents always make a Sun Elf, two Moon Elf parents is the same, but one of each has their child's alignment based on when they're born. Interesting. So, like, daytime, I mean, I'm assuming day means Sun Elf and night means, there we go, day birth Sun Elf, night birth Moon Elf. There we go. That makes sense. Cryptic says, I have not. I've heard it's a really good show, but I will let Oakleaf go off about that. Same, it's on my list too, Cryptic. Oakleaf says it's pretty good, made by some of the same people who made Avatar: The Last Airbender. I can definitely read acronyms. My favorite character is a Deaf Knight, and apparently they have her animated with real sign language. I actually want to sit down and watch that, because I've heard that, and it would kind of just really be cool to see that in action. Cryptic says the ruling family has a rule in place that the reigning king and queen must not be the same type of elf. So if the crown prince is a sun elf, he must marry a moon elf and vice versa. Ah. Forcing the balance. That's pretty cool. Oakley says that's really cool. I like that they're not opposed to each other like a lot of alignment type world building would usually do. Same. It's sort of like they're acknowledging that they need each other in order to function as a full society. So that's pretty cool. Cryptic says that it's a rule that's been in place since the birth of their kingdom because they fought a war to leave another nation that had stopped taking the needs of the many into account. Ah. Yeah, and I guess that makes sense because, like, when you're in that kind of situation, you're thinking about what works for the survival of your entire. You're working on survival essentially, and that means the survival of your people or the people that you're with, so on and so forth. So like, it's better to come together and work together through that than it is to be like, yeah, we're just not. It's the entire structure that comes out of encouraging that working together. So I appreciate that. Oakleaf says, I'm trying to find one of my favorite quotes about my fae folk that isn't too long to fit in the chat box. I wish you the best of luck. Looking at it, it sounds like the chat box has a very short character limit, so I'm saluting you. Cryptic says, at this point that reason has been forgotten, but they still take tradition very seriously. Still, yeah, that's still cool. And it also it really makes sense too if it's been generations since the foundation of their kingdom. Oakley says context to Faye has been captured and beaten up, but the people who caught him don't know what he is. MC is trying to get them off the scent. All right, we are bracing for impact. Oakleaf says they don't come by day walking into town. It's when the night is full of fog and there's moonlight a little too bright, when you lose your way or on paths you knew, or wake in the night because something said your name in the dark. That's when those things are like all mist and moon, and you can't chain that. You can't see its blood on your knuckles. That is cool as fuck. It's that last little bit especially is metal as hell. But I also just love the entire idea of this unknowable race that's these unknowable elves that are just near mythical godlike creatures that are capable of slaughtering you in a heartbeat, but and for this reason there are stories that are just warning you about them. I know that sounds absolutely terrible when spoken aloud, but like, it's fantasy races, it's like mythical beings and whatnot. And I do love it whenever people take that kind of angle with elves. Largely because ethereal elves, just that entire Galadriel-esque beauty of these old magical creatures, it's just chef's kiss. Meanwhile, you have my elves who are just racist as fuck, and also slightly more logical Florida men than humans. Like, humans and elves are just fucking messes, and it's great. Which is exactly the perfect description of Mick and Eleanor. Those two are actually like the flip side of their individual species races reputations. Oakleaf says the irony, of course, is that he is in chains and he does bleed, so the MC is playing on the folklore hard, but also he has seen the moonlight and heard his voice in the fog. And he pegs this. Excellent. I am a fan of this. Oakley says, I mean, if you've read the Silmarillion, Tolkien elves are also hot messes. True. Very true. And I get to Lord of the Rings and they're all like beautiful and graceful and stuff like that. Anyway, it is 9 o'clock, so we should probably switch over to our documents at this point. So, just as a recap, for anybody who is just joining us, there are 3 word sprints. Each of them are 20 minutes long. You see the little 20-minute counter in the bottom left of your screen. These are word sprints in name only. You can write, you can edit, but you can also just do whatever. Just hang out, vibe with us, whatever. So if you haven't already, summon a document or summon a project. And if you'd like, tell us what you're working on in the chat. Cryptic says, I don't entirely believe any lore that says any versions of elves aren't at least slightly hot messes. Fair enough. Honestly, yeah. That makes sense too. Because, like, as much as I love the entire idea of perfect godly beings, it's just funny if they're not also. Oakleaf says, I'm eating soup as usual for this one, lol. What kind of soup do we have this week? and Cryptic, I assume you're working on your laundry? I am working on still editing, but I'm going to be doing some rewriting, so we're going to see where we're going here and how far I get to the rewriting bit. But in any case, that having been said, let us shake out our hands, wiggle in our seats. Oakleaf says chicken and potato, that does sound delicious. Cryptic says I'm going to annihilate my laundry, lol. Also excellent. Get that productivity done, get that adulting done. Hell yeah. That said, take a deep breath and let it out slowly. 20 minutes are on the clock. Get ready. Get set. Best of luck, and I will see you on the other side. And with that, let's go. Alright, that is our very first break, our very first sprint done, not our break. I put 15 minutes on the clock for our break, but how did we do? As for me, I edited 742 words. About half of that was actual rewriting, so that's pretty cool. Kitten, Oakleaf says Kitten has joined us again. Kitten is a valuable member of the community. So Kitten is more than welcome, for sure. Other than that, how was the soup? And how's the laundry going, Cryptic? I really like this mix. I don't know, I like pseudo-French-ish music. What is this genre even called? I've always been curious. It's like Parisian cafe music, and I dig it always, no matter what it's playing. Like, I can listen to that one song from Ratatouille all day long, let's just say. Cryptic says, laundry is completely put away. Now I just have to wash the dirty stuff before next Tuesday. Good luck. Godspeed. Oakley says he has extra toes for typing efficiency. Aww, polydactyl cats are so cute. It's like their paws are a little bit, I don't know, the extra toes make their paws so much fluffier looking, and it's difficult to resist that, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm pretty sure you know what I mean, because he is your cat, and I'm sure it's cat charm. So anyway, Oakleaf says, soup is okay, not my best effort. Hey, that's it. That's alright. We all have soups like that. Cryptic says, it's got a very playing over an old-timey ball feel, and I love it. Right? Or it just kind of makes you want a coffee and a croissant. Or croissant. I just fucking murdered French. But it's French, so it's okay. As previous drafts of the... Oh, actually, can I talk? I can talk about the beta now. But, like, the absolute funniest thing, and I love him for this, I do miss him. I hope he's doing okay. But one of my betas, he kind of got burned out with writing. I have to check in on him and see what's up. But, you know, Simon, if you're listening, I hope you're doing it excellently. Come back to us and be awesome. I do miss your writing and stories and commentary. But anyway, funny story about this. But like, long story short, one of the betas was actual European, and I used French like Rebecca Yaros uses Gaelic, which is to say very butchered and very badly. And I feel, on the one hand, so bad about this because, oh shit, an actual European read this and cringed hard. On the other hand, that is the funniest thing that's ever happened to my writing, and God, I wish I had the balls to keep to like lean into it, but I also because ultimately it's like it's French, like it's not, it's different. It's there are only a handful of colonies left from France, whereas Spanish, if you shit on Spanish, that's actually bad. But like when you're talking about Parisian French, it's like an easy target. Let's be honest with each other. But in any case, I do love the French language. It's very lyrical. But I murder the shit out of it because I cannot do any other accent except for American, and like I can do this accent and Southern, and that's it. Like I lost the ability as a child to do like RP. I cannot roll my R's, which is terrible because I really want to learn how to speak Spanish, and I physically cannot roll my R's, which sucks. I cannot pronounce French worth a shit. Which is also kind of funny because I've taken French. That I'm just an absolute hot mess when it comes to languages. But one of them I actually do feel guilty because I live in, New York City has a very high population of Spanish-speaking residents, so that's why I want to learn how to speak Spanish. But it's kind of slow going, and like I said, I will never be able to pronounce things correctly even if I wanted to. And I do want to, but I cannot. I cannot roll my R's. I cannot figure out how to do it. And if anybody has any tricks, drop me a DM in Blue Sky because I would like that. When it comes to French, I just think it's funny as hell to murder the shit out of the pronunciation of French languages. The French language, I mean. It's also, acceptable target for multiple reasons, but also, I don't know. Anyway. Where was I? We talked about how the funniest beta comment I've gotten was, oops, I accidentally murdered French to a French speaker from Europe. But honestly, it also shows you how valuable having beta readers from all kinds of all walks of life can be, because I learned so much that I didn't even realize were a thing in French. I studied French and I looked into French culture, but you wouldn't know, for example, one of the absolute most valuable comments I had ever received, which was really super cool, is this beta took me aside and he was like, actually, Mademoiselle is kind of sexist these days because it's talking down to women. And I'm like, you would never know that. Every French course that you take in high school and in college and whatnot, and the States will tell you, yeah, you refer to Mademoiselle, unmarried women as Mademoiselle, but no, that you should not. And I'm like, that is so cool. I would never have thought that you would, does anybody ever think that you would need somebody who speaks French to look over your stuff? But yeah, you kind of do. And I guess the Rebecca Yarros controversy should have really been kind of a clue in. Granted, Rebecca Yarros is actually working with a language that's spoken by technically oppressed people, but nonetheless, it's we harped about Rebecca Yarros for not actually doing the research and employing is it sensitive readers in that case? I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be. Just in general, readers that would have knowledge of this particular facet. In her case, especially because she's a traditionally published author, so I do believe she had books. Maybe, I don't know. I know very little about Rebecca Yarros, but I do know that she has been in the industry even before Iron Flame and Fourth Wing. Oh, there goes the Parisian Romance, so let's play it again. But the point is, if you think you can only do so much research into different topics, but the most valuable thing that you can ever do, and this is why communities are so cool and so important to a writer, it's best if you can find people who are willing to read your writing and have the experience with things that are very important to your novel. French was never really super important to The Nameless Song, which is why I took out a lot of French references and renamed characters, and I really downplaying the French in this upcoming draft, but it was still prominent enough that I should have done a actual reader for French, but I was just lucky enough to get one anyway, and he was super cool about it, and I do appreciate him and hope he's doing well. Um, but that having been said, TLDR, if something that isn't part of your experience is a prominent part of your book, always get a reader for that bit of experience. You know what I mean? So, Oku says his paws look like mittens. Excellent. That is fantastic. And also fuzzy, and I love it. Kitties. Cryptic says, also, I feel like I should let you know, Jax, one of the main characters of the D&D work in progress is a Void Elf, so you will get you will very get Void Elf stuff when I do work on that. Excellent. I would love to see more Void Elf stuff. Oakleaf says, I speak some German and French. And French defies me entirely. I can't make heads or tails of it. Their arrogance about their language makes them easy targets for cringe. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. It's just sort of like when you think about French, you think about one thing, and I think we all know what that one thing is. Oakleaf says, yeah, having beta sensitivity readers is super important. It's wild that trad authors don't have them for IRL languages and cultures. If I ever do edit Wild West work in progress, I'll need a hard of hearing reader. Yeah, honestly, with the big five especially, it kind of, I understand that every employee costs money, and the trend right now in publishing is to do things as cheaply as possible because corporations. Like, I'm not saying that to defend them. I'm saying, yeah, I get that's where this is coming from, and God, am I so tired about it. But with the big five especially, which Yaros is published with, you would think, and in fact, the Big Five has been in hot water many a times for even worse violations of not having a book that should have a sensitivity reader, not get a sensitivity reader. But, I mean, what can you say? Like, I know that I always try to defend trad publishing as a valid route of publishing. Like, it has its perks, it has its drawbacks, just like self-publishing. Like, self-publishing isn't always accessible for everybody. That isn't to say that trad publishing is more accessible. It's more that it's more accessible if you don't have the money to do self-publishing well. So that's where the perk comes in. But at the same time, I also hear why people are absolutely railing on trad publishing, because a lot of the stuff you would think that they would hire and learn their lessons from, but they just want to push out books as quickly and as cheaply as possible. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, it does make a little bit of sense, because you're not going to be the only author that gets published in a single season. You might not even be one of 10. There might be God knows how many the Big Five will publish in a single month, let alone a year. So I get it. The front list titles are vast and many. And that is how publishers stay afloat. They mass produce books so that they'll regain the revenue that they lost printing all of this. But nonetheless, like, there was a time, it's getting cheaper and cheaper these days, and smaller publisher, and you see problems all across the board with big publishers and smaller publishers. The other day I had gone down to Hoboken, which is a very fun town, but it's also got these really neat bookshops, right? And I was standing in the Little City Bookshop, which is a super cool local bookshop. Go there if you're in the area. But I was looking at their fantasy novels, and I had seen a couple that I was kind of interested in. And one of them, both of them, I looked up the reviews very quickly, and that just gives us an idea that there was a break. And neither of them were very well reviewed, essentially. But both of them were traditionally published, and one of them was like The Apollo by Grace Ward, and it was like the reviews were railing on this book for having so many errors in it. And I'm like, one of the things that really shot my confidence to hell recently was that I keep on losing out on jobs because publishers are like, you're not perfect. One of my clients had actually run my work through Amazon grammar checker, and they were like, here's a list of like 5 errors that you should have caught and stuff like that. Or not 5 errors, it was more like 10. But still, it was like a 300-page book, and they wanted me to do this in a short amount of time, very cheaply, as cheaply as possible, and it was frustrating. I kind of took pride in my work, but being told over and over again that I miss out on this stuff was something. But then I turn around and I hear that there are books that are getting published anyway with super easy errors that I definitely would have caught. It's sort of like why I'm lying down on the floor and crying. But also it's sort of like, and this is why I can't wade into fantasy all that often, and why I read often, why I find myself gravitating more towards older books, because there was a lot more care put into older books. And with fantasy, which is a very high traffic genre these days, it's like, it's that one principle where you have like 10% good stuff and 10% diamond and 90% rough, if you know what I mean. But it's like, I don't even know what's going on. And this way, like I said, the Apollo was printed by a smaller publisher, and it's like you would expect better quality from an indie publisher, because it's not the big 5. And I won't say that smaller publishers don't pride profits over production quality, that is. But I've worked mostly for indie publishers, and I know that that's not true. In fact, I got my last truly publishing gig was with one that ran at like a tech startup, and profits and shareholder opinions were king, essentially. That's why I got laid off with like 300 other people. So it's so depressing, and I want to go back into it. That's this dumb thing. Excuse my language, but that is the silly thing, really. But like, it's what I feel the most affinity to. Like, I've always wanted to make books, one way or another. It's either I write them myself or I work with them, and I bring them into being. But like, things are very, very different from when I first entered the workforce, guys. It is very depressing out there. Anyway, let's see what we missed with the chat. Cryptic says she's probably my fave character, TBH. Yeah, one of the D&D work in progress characters has steampunk prosthetics. I need to figure out the best way to handle that, to be honest. Oakleaf says, okay, but steampunk prosthetics are rad. Cryptic says, yeah, she's a gnome monk and I love her so much. Oakleaf says, Trad Pub is 99% quantity over quality, and it's a real shame because there are so many talented creatives out there. The way I cringed at being criticized via Amazon Grammar Checker, heinous, right? right? Oh god. It was a smaller indie publisher too, and they did offer me a job, but I couldn't. It was immediately after I moved, and I couldn't move. Um, Actually, funny story about that one. I declined that offer because I didn't want to move away from Dipshit, and then Dipshit does the exact same thing where he's like, he gets offered a job out of state, and he's like, "Bye, bitch." So, Carlos, if you're listening, fuck you. Um, Oakley says, same, I can't read a lot of new stuff. It's such a shame. And it's not that the authors are bad, the industry is just a ruin. Well, it's a little bit of both. Like, there are a lot of fantasy titles out there that a lot of people hype up on both sides of the line, and I'm just like reading them, and I'm like, God, I just, ugh. Like, there was Dragonfall, which I still have yet to pick back up. There was a lot of stuff on Tumblr that a lot of people hyped up, and I would read like a couple of chapters, and I'd be like, oh god, like just the prose is so clanky, or this is or the characters are so obnoxious that I just cannot get behind them. I've read some really heinous shit on both sides of the line. In truth, a lot of the core quality is in part the author as well. A lot of people have never heard of a developmental editor, and it shows on both sides. The only difference is that with trad publishing, you expect them to know what a fucking dev editor is. Self-publishers, Oakley says, I was introduced to the Audra Winters book talk drama today by a friend, and woo, what a mess. Oh, now I'm curious. I have missed something. Hold on. What book talk drama? Oh, wait, I think I've heard this. Was this the one with the AI stuff? Or was it the one... Oh, no, wait. This was the one where she hyped up her shit and didn't deliver, if I recall. It was basically Light Lark, only somehow worse. I had heard of this one. Yeah. Okay. Badly edited mess. Yeah, okay, now I remember. I know Age of Scorpius. I completely forgot her name, but yeah. So apparently she was so good at marketing that she sold 15,000 copies of a book that turned out to be terrible, and people are furious, and she had concealed her sale. But like, come on, if people are dumb enough to buy a book at sight unseen, whose fault is that? Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Is like, I don't know what Book Talk thinks of Light Lark these days. I know that outside of Book Talk, everybody was like, God, Light Lark sucks. But if Book Talk thinks that, you would think that they would have learned, because that was literally Light Lark, wasn't it? Like, the author, it was like, the author had not only hyped up her book, she also did that entire Instagram thing where she was like, this is my dream life. Behold how wealthy and cool I am. That was that. And that was Light Lark. And I think that Age of Scorpius didn't go that far. But it still has that element. Light Lark still had that element of a lot of hype and not enough delivery. If you remember the part where Alex Astor had promised spice and there was no spice, and none of the spicy bits that she had advertised were actually in Light Lark. Plus, she did it via vibes, or she really hyped up the vibes, and She really pushed viral TikToks and so on and so forth. That's basically what Audra Winters also did, and yet nobody fucking learned from that, did they? Cryptic says, yes, yeah, this is just Late Lark 2.0. Yeah. But I feel like that's just social media in general these days. Like, on the one hand, it is a little bit encouraging because it means that it doesn't take much to market. You just have to nail your aesthetic and nail your snippet and be obnoxious about it, I guess. Well, not obnoxious, but you're going to be obnoxious no matter what you do when it comes to marketing on social media. It's just the nature of the beast. Nobody likes to be sold to, and yet you have to do it anyway. But the point is, the Late Lark and I guess Age of Scorpius model is that you nail your aesthetics and you appeal to that little bit that really scratches at a certain audience's brain, and they go feral over it. If you can do that, which sounds like it's hard, but it does rely on luck a little bit. But if I'm looking at pitch events the right way, it's not super difficult to master. If you can do it, then marketing's not as intimidating a beast to do. You just have to nail those aesthetics. But on the other hand, I mean, it does speak to book culture these days that there seems to be a different controversy every other month. Whether it's another social media star putting out a shit book to Book Talk and Book Talk going feral over it and everybody else being like, God, why? Or it's Book Talk or Twitter author being racist again. Or sometimes it's Insta author. Like, actually, Insta authors, from what I've seen of drama, tend to be a completely different breed. If I recall correctly, there was at least one murder in the Instagram world. So that was interesting. Yeah, just book drama in general is just so weird. But consequently, I don't want to say that it produces bad books, because technically that's not true. What we're seeing, Cryptic says there was what? Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure if she was Instagram, but there was this woman who wrote this children's book about grief. And she centered her entire writing persona on various social media platforms about grief because her husband had died. As it turns out, she murdered her husband. Yes, there was an actual murder. Let me actually look this up. Let me see who this was. God, now I can't find it, but it was definitely not super duper long ago. Damn, I wish I knew what her name was. I'm definitely not making this up. That is. Oh, was it Corey Richins? Yep, that's her. Corey Richins. Yep, that's her. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember which social media profile she was or platform she was on, but yeah, she was a picture book author who murdered the shit out of her husband and wrote children's books about it. Yeah, for some reason, DuckDuckGo did not want to actually show me that. um, Thanks, DuckDuckGo. But anyway. Oakley says, I'm not on TikTok or Insta at all, and or even Twitter anymore. Can't stand it. Yeah, honestly, I'm only on Insta for 2 reasons these days, and one of them is just bees. I look at pictures and videos of bees and save them to a collection. The other one is for an indie band. But I can't do TikTok at all. That is too scary for me. And Twitter, we just got done with some Twitter drama on my B Sky timeline. I'm not even getting into it, but like, I'm not going to comment on it at all. But I do think that Twitter itself is not a very fun platform to maintain. If you have to do it professionally, I can understand, I guess, especially since the industry won't move over to Blue Sky for some reason. So I can't fault anyone for going back there. Like, I'm not going to be weird and say I'm disappointed because, like, you got to do what you got to do in order to market. But at the same time, I personally can't do it because I just can't maintain that kind of presence in that kind of environment. The reason why I was able to get into Blue Sky was because it was so small whenever I started that it was easier to find a community there. On Twitter, everybody is basically like LinkedIn, which I absolutely fucking hate, but is the only way that I can find job postings. LinkedIn is a whole, guys. Like, if you think that any other social media is a whole, LinkedIn is a whole. But Twitter has that kind of air. Writing Twitter, at least. Like, I don't know about any other part of Twitter, and I'm not even going to comment on it because, you know, people get super ragey about that. They have every right to. Speaking as a Jewish person, they have every right to, and they're right. But at the same time, like, you can't. There's no discussion about it, like, especially in Blue Sky. So I'm not even going to touch it. But for me personally, I can't do that. And I'm not going to go back to Twitter unless for some reason I absolutely have to. Insta is kind of just as bad. Actually, it is just as bad. Like, I see posts that get fed to me whenever I'm looking at bees. And I get a whole mix of stuff, and there's some heinous shit in the comments, guys. Do not read Instagram comments. The posts themselves aren't bad. And the Beastagram is a delight and wholesome, and I love it. Until you get to, like, the militant vegans. But it's not a place where I can foresee posting all that often. Because it's... When I used to be active there, I would just attract all kinds of scammers and shit. And it is meta, so, like, there's that too. Like, meta's just as bad as Twitter and whatever else. Actually, Meta period is just as bad as Twitter. Anyway, you get what I mean. But the indie side of things is there for some reason, so there's that. TikTok, I just don't understand. I just don't really want to get into it. Of the three, if I had to, if the only one that I'd consider picking up again might be Insta. I know I said that it's bad beforehand, but like, if y'all want pics of Bean Jamin, there's not too many other platforms where I can post them. Blue Sky is not an image sharing site, unfortunately. It's not a video site at all. So it's like you have to find some place to have all these fun stuff. I might post videos of Bean Jamin going off on adventures. We'll see. Cryptic says, oh well, I can't. What do I even say that? This is all like about the murder. You can't murder someone and then use their death like that. Yeah, basically. Quant had an article as the first result. Now I'm looking into what Quant is. Like, I like DuckDuckGo, but sometimes... Ah. Okay. I might have to play around with that. Like I said, I like DuckDuckGo too. Why is it asking me for cookies, all that? Refuse all enclosed. But, sometimes its search results aren't super helpful. Oakley says, I was on Twitter for years and years, getting away from it was frankly good for my mental health. Understandable, yeah. Like, I applaud anybody who can do that. Like, I know that they're probably doing it for professional reasons. Or at least the writers, I mean. God knows about anybody else. Cryptic says, I'm probably lucky. I never understood Twitter, so I never did a thing on it and can't miss it. Yeah, I mean, Blue Sky is basically Twitter only with a better community, I think. It's not a there are certain... It's not a community to go on if you're looking to go trad publishing. Like I said, if it's... The industry is unfortunately elsewhere, but everything else about it is a lot better. Like, it has an actual community, like I said, but it also has a better block system, better muting system, no AI. I feel like even its images aren't as shitty as Twitter, but maybe it's just me. Like, you upload an image and it's not as bad. I know that sounds very small, but it's sort of like even the little details is what I'm saying. Cryptic says, ah yes, militant vegan. Somehow we're exploiting the creatures that will just leave, lol. Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because there's just a lot of misinformation about beekeeping out there. Like, okay, fun bee fact. It used to be a practice to clip a queen's wings after she's mated to keep her from inciting a swarm and flying off. The problem with that is that if you accidentally injure a queen, then the bees might ball her and kill her. So that's a big reason why it's not as huge of a practice anymore, but also it's like a lot of beekeepers think that it's unnecessary and you know, it's just doing more harm than good. It's taking a huge risk because of the entire balling thing. So if you if you do your research, you know, you can find places that treat their bees decently. There's also, but like, it's also that vegans believe that honey is for bees, not us. It's the same argument they make with cow's milk. But and also that they think that a lot of beekeeping practices that are still in practice, like smoking, smoking a hive is animal cruelty, and you can see the argument of that. Smoking doesn't hurt the bees. It just makes them think that there's an emergency, so they fill up on honey, and by filling up on honey, that prevents them from being able to stretch their abdomens so that they literally cannot physically sting you. But also it makes them lethargic because they're full, so it makes them a little bit slower to react, which means that they're a little bit more docile to you. So this is a practice so that you don't hurt them whenever you're checking the hive, but also so you don't get stung to shit and then basically end up with dead bees, because bees cannot, or worker bees have those barbed stingers and will kill themselves if they sting you. And that is the correct use of kill themselves, by the way, because they can sting once they're kind of known for this. Worker honeybees can only sting once because they have barbed stingers. So once their stinger enters your skin, it can't be removed unless the bee is very careful and twists around and takes the time to work herself out. Most bees, when they're scared, don't. Say they rip out part of their abdomen. Sorry to say that, but they do. And that is why a lot of honeybees will not sting you unless they feel threatened. Which, if you're a beekeeper, they might. A lot of bees can also recognize human faces, including their keepers, so smoking is just an extra precaution. They'll probably know that you're friendly and somebody who gives them shelter and food during the winter to keep them alive. But that having been said, I do eat honey, and I do support beekeeping, especially local beekeepers, where I can easily determine whether or not they treat their bees humanely. Or at least, so you can ask them questions about how they keep bees, and or just in general, I feel like local beekeepers would be more likely than commercial ones to treat their bees humanely. But ultimately with bees, we do have a symbiotic relationship with them, and that includes the vegans, because honeybees are pollinators. They're massive pollinators, and what apiaries do, or in other words, bee farms, what they do is they rent out their hives to commercial farmers so that they can pollinate. In other words, if you're a vegan and you're buying fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, 9 times out of 10 you got those vegetables because an apiary was raising honeybees. So the way that I see it is, if you're if you're getting honey from an apiary that's willing to treat their bees respectfully and humanely, then you're just helping out the food supply all around. So you're keeping that apiary in business. They're allowing their bees to pollinate both the wildflowers around you, but also they might rent out their hives to farms that you might be able to get local fruits and vegetables. It's all like an entire web. And the bees themselves get their honey. They have enough honey to last through the winter, and the beekeepers will make sure of that, because bees cost money to keep on buying. They're not just buying bees every single winter. They're not buying queens. They have to make sure their hives survive the winter. So, is honey for bees? Technically, yes. But bees make surplus honey, and bees will always have enough honey to keep them going. Or they'll have enough food. They'll have enough nutrition. Don't worry about the bees. They're going to be fine. But that is my bee rant. Save the bees. I also know that the argument is that honeybees muscle out native bees, and they kind of do. That is the downside of honeybee keeping. But You know what else kind of causes the collapse of honeybees? Pesticides, not the honeybees. Or, you know what causes the collapse of the local bee population? It's pesticides, basically, not necessarily always the honeybees. So, Cryptic says it's a European-based no AI search engine that's worked pretty well for me. I am definitely going to play around with it. Maybe start putting that in my rotation instead of DuckDuckGo. I mean, like I said, I still like DuckDuckGo, but like I do like having options. Cryptic says, time to feed the cats, but on my phone, so you guys are coming with me. Hell yeah, feed that cat. Oakleaf says, reminds me of the people who think shearing sheep is cruelty and not, incredibly necessary because of how humans have bred them over millennia. Oh my god, yes. I feel so bad. Like, I do watch sheep shearing videos on YouTube. So, first off, yes, all shearing sheep is humane. They might nick sheep now and then, but like, it's like shaving. You can't shave a patch of skin and not accidentally cut yourself, no matter how hard you try. You will even micro cut yourself. But in any case, oh my god, like I watched some of these sheep videos and it's like the sheep has not been shorn in 3 years and the sheep looks so miserable with all that wool. And whenever they're shaved, you get to watch the sheep kind of like jump up and start like trotting around very energetically. And it's like, yes, sheep, go be free. You have been freed from your own wool. And yeah, it's terrible that there are animals that cannot survive in the wild without human intervention, that can no longer survive in the wild. Any animal that cannot survive without human intervention by default can't survive in the wild. But like, you can't undo millennia of domestication, unfortunately. So these animals will exist no matter what you do with them. So sheep cannot shed on their own. They're always going to grow these huge matted coats, and it's our responsibility, because we bred these animals to be like that, to continue the tradition of shearing. Chickens cannot survive in the wild, I'm sorry to say. So it is fine to keep chickens and collect their eggs. Some pets, like, sure, you'll have feral cats and dogs, but like they'll become invasive species because they don't know how to. There's nothing that will control their population properly, and also like they don't know how to control themselves in a way. So like it's our responsibility to keep that from happening and to protect the native species by getting our fucking pets spayed and neutered and keeping the cats indoors. But like, yeah. Cryptic says, honestly, I find vegan ethics childish, but that's a whole thing I probably shouldn't get into tonight. Honestly, yeah. The only thing that I will say that I agree with the vegans about is the fact that the commercial meat industry, the industrial meat complex, is absolutely horrific. I do think that it is absolutely fucking horrific that that there are farms that will keep chickens in these tiny ass little pens. It's absolutely fucking horrific that we have fish farms that keep salmon in these tiny enclosures, and it's horrific what we've done with cows. Like, sometimes we'll, I don't know if it's still a practice, but I know that back in the 90s, and this is why mad cow disease was a thing, we would feed cows ground up cow because it was cheap feed. Were and are horrors in the industrial meat complex, but then again, there's horrors in all food production. I really do think that uh, all food production in the United States needs to have an overall, because of all of this bullshit that goes on. Like, there are farmers out west who like farm certain crops not for human consumption exactly, but just to get water credits or something like that. There are human rights violations with migrant workers on a lot of farms out west, especially. They're not given enough water or shade for harvesting your fruits and vegetables in the brutal sun. Never mind breaks, like bathroom breaks, or just in general breaks. There are fruits and there's unethical practices outside of the U.S. too when it comes to the harvesting of plants. Like, there's a reason why Tony's Choco Lonely is prides itself in being an ethical chocolate bar, because chocolate is not harvested ethically for the most, and 90% of the industry. Like, the more you dig at it, the more you realize how many hoarders there are in food production. And you're not safe if you're vegan. You're not safe from that if you're vegan, let's just say. Oakleaf says it's almost like beekeepers and shepherds know more than vegans on the internet. I don't disrespect all vegans, just those kinds of vegans. Like, if you're horrified by factory farming, there we go, and don't want to support it, that's real as hell. But the people who make their whole holier than thou, make it their whole holier than thou personality, nope. Yeah. Especially on social media, like, back off, my dudes. Like, PETA's a shit organization anyway. They're actual animal murderers. Cryptic says, oh yeah, I definitely don't disrespect all vegans, to be clear. I just find that everyone should do this because of my ethics to be rooted in childish ideas. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment, which is why I'm not commenting on Twitter right now. But anyway, Oakleaf says, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, we're in an Omegas with millions of sacrificial children. Cryptic says, it gets really the good place real fast. Oh my god, yes. Tomatoes are, hilariously, tomatoes are like the one crop that you can't find as many like, there are definitely still probably horrors involved with tomato farming, but like, don't think too hard about where your avocados came from, ladies and gents and others. Oakley says, no ethical consumption under capitalism. Precisely. And that is literal as hell. Like, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I'm only a vegetarian, not a vegan. I am a vegetarian because my intestines fucking hate me. I am not for ethical reasons, and also fucking save the bees. Anyway. I just realized that what are our 3 usual points for this for these streams? It's nostalgia, communism, and food, and we just did communism and food in the same bullet point. So congratulations, everyone! We figured out how to do it. Now, if we can only figure out how to fit in nostalgia and all of that. Anyway, this might be a good time to say that we should probably get back to our writing. It is 10:16. Oakley says, hey, oh hey, my intestines hate me too. Sad, sad handshake. Yeah, I say that I'm ovo-lacto, but in actuality it's more ovo, and even then, it's under certain circumstances. Like, I mean, it depends on the milk. I strangely have I don't have too bad of a time with most cheeses, yogurts, and ice cream. But when you start getting into milk, like actual milk and cream, like heavy cream, my insides just want to leap up through my throat and strangle me. And for some reason, I cannot eat eggs in the morning. I can eat eggs and baked goods, no problem. But like eggs on their own, for some reason, not until at least 1 p.m. It is the most specific thing, but it's like my stomach's like, I just want sweet baked goods in the morning. If you don't give me those, we're going to have a massive problem. So, yeah, that's probably more than you need to know, but that is why I'm ovo-lacto. Let's see. Cryptic says, it's nostalgia time. Chicken Run, the communist chicken movie from my childhood, could do it. That is true. That used to be one of my favorite movies, too, and I keep forgetting it exists. I should really rewatch that. Oakley says, fun Oakley fact, I am allergic to garlic and silver. So, in other words, you're a fey vampire. Excellent. Cryptic says, have you tried Lactaid? I have. I used to actually love Lactaid and lactose-free milks because, hear me out, they taste better. They actually do like have this kind of sweeter taste to them, and I used to fucking love that. But the problem is, those milks tend to be $5 around here, whereas a carton of almond milk goes for $2.50. So that's my secret. Cryptic says, fun cryptic fact, I'm allergic to sesame seeds, but not the oil for some reason. That is really weird. Because, maybe it's something in, maybe it's the protein in the husks? That's weird. Cryptic says, although apparently that's common in people with minor sesame allergies. Ah. At the very least, you're not alone there. Cryptic says, no, I agree. My one housemate is lactose intolerant and we drink Fairlife all the time. I am so sorry for your wallet. Fairlife is so good, but oh my god, it's so expensive. Or at least here it is. Anyway, yeah, like I said, we should probably get back to our docs. So, okay, so this is going to be the second out of 3 sprints. Cryptic says, we're not the ones who pay for it, his mom is. God bless parents for being able to carry that for their kids. Who we also live with. Excellent. I wish I had. I sincerely do. I mean, my parents will swing by and help me out now and then, but like I've been independent since I was like 23, so unfortunately, the week-to-week groceries are all on me. But anyway, actually, technically, before then, I think I was 22 when I finally moved out. Anyway, second out of 3 streams, or 3 sprints. We're going to see how long we go with this. The second break will probably be not as bad. I say this now, and then we'll probably get into like more communism with the food industries. But anyway, 20 minutes are on the clock. We're going to do this. We've gotten the communism out. Cryptic says we help with the stuff they can't do because the health stuff, and we get to live and eat here. That is an excellent and awesome deal for sure. But anyway. Whew. 20 minutes on the clock. I wish y'all the best of luck on whatever you do, whether that is the rest of the laundry or whatnot. And that said, here we go. we hit the end of that track again. the second of 3 sprints. So we're getting there. We're getting there. I know it's 10:41, so at 11 exactly we'll get into that last one, and I promise I will try to, or at least I will try to aim for that last one. Anyway, how do we do? For me, here it is. Okay, this is 555 words, which actually is not that bad. As you know, I am going to be starting on the 6th draft in September 1st, actually. Hopefully I will be done with the Infinite Sadness by then. Cryptic says, chilled and had popcorn since I got through the laundry list on the laundry on the first one. Excellent. You deserve popcorn and a treat. Where was I? Right. I am currently halfway through chapter 8. I just have 2 chapters left. One of them is probably going to receive a light edit, thankfully. It just has a little bit of awkward wording. The other one, not as much of an overhaul as what I'm doing right now. However, it'll definitely be, the fight scene definitely needs retooling. So, it's really just 2 more chapters. I'm hoping to do a lot of it over Labor Day weekend. So we'll see how much gets done. There are a few other things I'd like to do on Labor Day weekend as well. And I also have only half of an outline, or at least 17 chapters, which I guess would be half of a fantasy novel. So I'm doing that in the mornings whenever I get up and take a walk. So I'm going to continue to do that, and hopefully we'll get a little bit closer to done. But it's going to be tricky. There's going to be a lot of crunching going on this week. Fingers crossed that I'll be able to do it. Am I nervous about this next draft? Yes, because it's been over half a year since I've properly written anything. I haven't actually worked on any new material since February. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But also, it's like this is the 6th draft, and I really want it to be actually solid from a developmental angle. Basically, I spoke a little bit about the last beta, but in some ways I kind of feel like either it came at the wrong time or I'm just not really great at taking criticism, but like I feel like if the last draft had been published and gotten a Goodreads review, it might have only hit like 2 stars or 3 stars, and I really want it to get to be, you know, like it's never going to be a 5-star book, but I would like it to be like at least 3 stars, 4 stars. Like I'd be happy with people being like, yeah, this was an alright book, 3.5 stars. But like, I'm a little bit nervous about whether or not I can execute that. I am getting better though. That is one thing that working on the Infinite Sadness has taught me. I wrote the Infinite Sadness in winter of 2023. And I'm going back through it now that it is summer of 2025, and I am rewriting bits. I am looking at bits. I'm like, holy shit, this is really clunky. So the fact that I can spot that, and the fact that I can edit that down and develop it into something that's a little bit stronger and that I'm a little bit prouder of, it does say a lot about how far I've come in just a year and a half, 2 years. So on that note, yeah, I do feel like I'll be able to do it, but at the same time, it's sort of like, goddamn, like I don't know what I'll do if I put this out to the betas and it also gets eviscerated. which says a lot about how well I take criticism. And I'm very well aware that I don't take criticism well, but betaing is a necessary part of the entire process, and especially if I want to share my writing with other people. Like, I've already worked out the system that if I get reviews, I'm not really going to read them. But, like, still, I just kind of hope that I can pull this off, and we'll see. At the very least, there will be bee people in it. I am very eager about the bee people. I got to the part of the outline where bee people are to be found, and already I do feel like most of the outline is a lot stronger than the last time around. In part because of the bee people and the fact that I had to have them as a milestone. And there's a point to having the bee people here, and they do tie what's going on in Sanctuary, the Dragon City State, with the rest of the country. And it does have an important message that adds to the story. So, like, I am very much happy that I've decided to add bee people into this book. If anything, I would have to say that right now there's only a handful of chapters that I feel are weak and kind of like, oh, I'm just going through this and it's not really going to be all that. It's going to be a little bit of a weaker section, but it's better that it's only a handful of chapters compared to last outline and last story and the trash draft where there was an entire arc that was the weak point. So in total, I'm a little bit more confident about this outline and the upcoming draft, but at the same time, again, I am super scared about where it's going to go. But we'll see. September 1st, basically, I'm going to start off with chapter 1, and I'm not going to try to rush it the way that I had with draft 5. Like, I'm not going to say I need to have this done by the end of 2026. Like, draft 5 suffered from the fact that I was trying to draft an entire novel in a year, from outline to ending, essentially. Granted, again, this was draft 5. What I basically did was outline and just draft 5 for that one. Draft 4 and draft 5. So it's not as bad. I've been I've been spacing out progress on the Nameless Song since 2021, 22, I want to say. But draft 6 is going to just end when it ends. I'm going to take my time with it. I'm going to get words done every single day. I don't know how many words that will be, but it will be at least a couple thousand. Or not a couple thousand, but like a couple hundred. Can't do a couple thousand. There will be an accountability thread on Blue Sky to post progress and snippets, so, you know, keep that an eye out for that. But, you know, I'm just going to pace myself, and we'll see where it goes. The outline is basically just a sketch, and I keep telling myself that. It's a general idea of what I want to have happen. I have a habit of throwing outlines straight out the window, so I'm not going to force myself to maintain it as a solid thing. And, you know, hopefully we'll get somewhere. But I'm not going to give up on getting something out there if this isn't it. But it does scare me. You know, I put in so much work, and they say that, you know, there's no expiration date on your dreams, essentially. And well, that is one thing that Blue Sky has been really great about. There was a thread recently about, you know, how it's never too late, and some of the people on there, people that I admire very much, would be dropping in, and they were like, yeah, I didn't write my first book until I was like in my late 40s. And I think the original post was like, the average age of your debut novel is at 40. And I think the main thing is, like, other platforms go hog wild about young artists. So, like, they'll hype you up if in your 20s and you have your debut novel, or if you're like in your early 30s, that's considered the norm. Like if you had that sentiment on Tumblr, you would have like 31-year-olds going like, "Yeah, I didn't write my first novel until I was 31." And I'm like, "God, fuck you." No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I support them as well, but like that is still very young. Uh, it's threads like these are for people, in my opinion, are more like for people who have lived entire lives like I feel like I have, and you get to this point where you've tried to push yourself as hard as you can in your chosen fields and you feel like you're getting nowhere and you haven't fulfilled that dream of making some art that people can appreciate. I am still not in my 40s, I will say that. I am among the people who are in their 30s and working on their first draft. Yes, even though I carry around a plush bee with me everywhere I go, and post childish things about bee people and have go off about special interests in bees. Surprise! I am just very neurodivergent on top of that, and I am undiagnosed neurodivergent on top of that. So, basically, yeah, I carry a plush bee around, and it helps with anxiety. Partly because I have an irrational fear that if I leave my apartment, then something will happen to said bee and everything in apartment. And partly because I don't like crowded areas, and squeezing bag with soft bee in it makes me feel good. But in any case, the main point that I'm trying to make is I am not quite at the average age according to Blue Sky, but oftentimes, especially lately, it's been feeling like, and I apologize for getting a little bit emotional here, like I've gotten to a point in my life where I feel like I'm spinning my wheels essentially, and it's the dumb. It's I don't want to say dumb. That's terribly ableist, and I have to work that out of my vocabulary. I apologize. Uh, but it's very silly to think that I don't have any value in society because, like, I have a day job, and that day job does important work, even though my specific tasks are mindless. Uh, and not exactly in publishing and stuff like that. Like, it's very important work, and I do want to believe that I'm making a difference, but it's not what I want to do with my life, and I haven't published anything yet, really, and I've been spending like years and years trying to get something together to publish, and that hasn't really happened except in a free sense yet. So to be so for me, these threads are like if you're in a thread and you're like, yeah, I didn't publish until 31, I'm like, well, a lot of people don't. Their lives don't start until they're in their 30s. Like anytime that you hear about 20-year-olds getting it, it's because they're rich and have the opportunity to get their shit together, or they just have access to better opportunities. When you're at 31, you should have, you should have your life together, essentially, quote unquote. But when you're getting like towards 35, that's when society tells you, you're running out of time. So that's why I find it more valuable to be on Blue Sky, where it says the average age isn't until 40. And by the way, here's this entire thread of authors who are past 40, well into their 40s, well into their 50s, not even retired, and finally getting to it, saying, it's not too late. Um, Cryptic says, I wish I could take to heart the idea that it's never too late, but it's so hard when I feel like I'm never getting closer to finishing something. And that's basically my exact sentiment too. So twinsies in the same boats and stuff like that. But so that's why it's difficult. For me lately, it's been about literally everything. I think it's just because I got so many blows in rapid succession, like that layoff, uh, essentially kicking me out of the publishing industry proper because I was never able to get back into it. And that is the end of our break. But like, there was that plus like the breakup of the first long-term boyfriend I've had in a long time. So it's sort of like, sorry, I'm getting very personal, emotional, but yeah, it just feels like, and the or again, sorry, the silly thing and the worst part about it is that dipshit left me with so much debt, and I was already paying down my student loan, so it's sort of like all of a sudden I have another student loan on top of everything else. Only the student loan is more demanding because it's actually credit card stuff. So it feels like he used to believe that for some people, and it's because he grew up in a less fortunate background, and I don't give a shit about talking about his personal stuff. He can fucking at me and then pay me back $30,000 if he's upset that I'm talking about this. But he did not come from a wealthy background, so and he was a New Yorker through and through. And there's a sentiment, if you're not a rich New Yorker, that you have to claw yourself out of a hole. And if you're not successful at clawing yourself out of hole, then the sides of that hole are essentially made of mud. So it's either you climb out of that hole and you're successful and you're rich and you get by, or you slide back down to where you came from. And he had this sentiment throughout our relationship where he would always feel like he'd take one step forward, but the 2 steps back were right around the corner. And I tried to be optimistic, and I tried to encourage him to be optimistic. I tried to build a life for us and claw us both out of a hole. And I felt like I was nearly successful with that until the layoff. And after the layoff, you know, he had his spending habits and his spending addictions, and I didn't stop him hard enough. I didn't cut him off. I didn't say no to him when I should have. And consequently, you know, he ran off, and I'm 5 steps behind where I should have been. And that's hard. And it's not even just about the money, it's about the social life too. It's sort of like he undid a lot of progress that I did. I was going to therapy before I met him, and I'm not now because I can't afford it, and he undid a lot of therapy. But so it's hard. And in a lot of ways, that's why I'm afraid that of where this draft will go. But the weird thing is, like, I don't give up, and I don't know why. Like, guess we're at that part of the night where I get all emotional. But the point is, like, it would be very easy to give up. Like, I don't have any reason not to. But I still keep on going. Um, it's not because I feel like by some stroke of luck things will work out. It's not because I feel like I have to live for something. It's more because it's for a lark, essentially. Just to see what would happen. So, in a way, I treat writing TNS and going into the next draft as that too. I treat every writing, excuse me, I treat every writing project that way. Like, it is 100% something that I'm doing for myself. It's something that I do because I enjoy it. but also because I want to see what happens whenever I'm finished with it. If I put it out there, I share it. 9 times out of 10, not a lot of people are reading. I know I've done a shit job at marking the infinite sadness, but I can see how many people open those emails, and I understand. I don't expect anything. I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect anything. I don't really expect an audience. Like, I think that's really the secret of it. You don't expect anything. You write you write with the expectation that you will share it, but you don't write with the expectation that anybody will read it. And then whatever happens, happens. Or at least that's why I'm kind of doing things. So I'm writing because I enjoy it and because I want to tell a story, but I'm going to put it out there just to see what happens. Like, I don't really expect anything from anybody. It's just that some part of me is afraid that I won't be able to tell the story that I want to tell, and that's really the bigger issue. Like, I know that not everybody's gonna like this story. I know that it's not going to be the most poignantly told story ever put to paper, and I know that there are so many better writers out there, and that I will never be able to achieve the same level of skill that they will. But the main point is putting something out there and being happy with what you put out there, and I guess the entire fear that I have is not getting there exactly. But I guess we'll see what happens when that happens. I will say also that having Benjamin around kind of helps, because like when you have a cute face, it's really difficult to want to walk into the Hudson and just sort of never come back up. So you don't really have to worry too much about me. So long as I have Benjamin around, like, things will be okay, I feel like. So, hanging in there for Benjamin's sake and seeing what will happen. And that is that. So let's see what we missed in the chat right now. Let's see. Cryptic says, I also very much have the symptom of didn't expect to survive this long and now I don't know what to do. Hope that's not too dark to say. It's not too dark to say because that is a sentiment that I understand very well. It's sort of weird, but I kind of feel like there's a dichotomy between positive and negative thinking. A lot of people think that it's positive, that you're upbeat and you're fine. And then there's negative where you're deep and dark and depressed, but there's an element to depression where it's just like you're in the middle. You're static, you're numb. Numb is even too much of a word to say because like it's not really... Numb kind of sounds depressing and negative, even though I am describing depression, but basically like when you're in the middle, it's like, this is a thing. Well, what now? It's sort of like... Let me think. I would say it's kind of like being stuck in a tree. You're not on the ground. You're not in the air. You're just sort of somewhere in the middle, and you're looking down at the ground, and you're looking up at the sky, and you're like, well, where do I go from here? Exactly. Surviving this long is a lot like that. You get to a point where your main achievement is not having killed yourself in high school. And I say that half jokingly and also with the acknowledgement that my abuser in high school had straight up told me that a lot of people were making bets that I wouldn't survive high school. Like, those were her exact words. So when I say for some people the being able to survive well into adulthood is an achievement, I'm speaking as through literal experience. So like I'm not being ableist or anything. That is literally my past right there. And if there are others out there who feel this, then I understand you, and I understand because I lived where you have been. But yeah, it's like whenever that becomes your biggest achievement, it's so weird. People want to talk about it like it's this positive thing. Like, yeah, you're a success story. You're so strong. You've survived another day. And yeah, that is an achievement. 100%. Like, celebrate every single day that you've decided to. You fought back against those thoughts in your head and were able to say, yeah, I'm going to stay for one more day. Celebrate that for sure. But, like, life has to be about more than that, you know? So it's sort of like, it's so weird. It feels so weird. And it makes your achievements feel small when doing something that was a struggle for you. When you do something and you've struggled to do it, but it came easily to everybody else. Like, people who don't suffer from depression don't have to think twice about how they live, and they live so much better for it. And that is a difficult thought to keep in mind, but like, it's also comparing yourself, I think. So like, it's dangerous to think like that. Anyway, Cryptic says, I kind of get that. I've never gotten started on therapy. I know that there's a lot to dig through here. But I'm finally getting insurance in October. Been approved, that's when it'll start. I've probably been making excuses. Like, I have United, so like, I haven't even bothered. Because like, we all know why Luigi did it. Let's just say. But like, it's also an excuse because I haven't even tried looking at therapists, and I really should. And hopefully I can finally dig through all the horrible BS in my head and figure out how to truly move forward. How Emily becomes a Reaper is actually one of the ideas I came up with in high school. Which is an awesome story for sure, and I do hope that you get back to it and that you find it as cathartic as it sounds. But yeah. Man, that's a lie. Midsummer Nights came from high school. I retooled the shit out of it, so it's not even like the original Midsummer Nights, but you know, the general concept is still there. I was about to say, I've gone through so many ideas and just threw most of them away that I don't think I have an idea from high school. I just don't have an idea from my fanfiction days that I feel like I can file off the serial numbers, which is a shame because I did come up with some really weird ass ideas that would, like weird ass positive ideas uh, during my fanfiction days that I still do miss horribly. But like, I also go back and read those fanfictions and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ. Oh Jesus Christ, I'm so glad I don't write like this anymore. But anyway, Cryptic says the river she ends up in is actually the one from my hometown, so if anyone recognizes it, they'd be able to figure out where she actually lived, to be honest. Hey, that's fine. I feel like, it's the best writing's personal, and doxes you a little bit. So, there's that. I definitely have ideas that would dox me. Like, I have an entire. That is right. That is true. I have 4 ideas. I keep forgetting the Arcadia exists. The Arcadia is a comedy that's basically Clerks but set in a bakery cafe, the very one that I used to work at. And some of the stories are real. Like, there was this one time somebody called in to ask if we could make them a titty cake, like a cake made in the shape of titties, and I had to politely tell them that we don't do that at this bakery. And hilariously, my coworker comes up and he's like, "Oh yeah, next time somebody calls, just tell them to go to this adult store that's down in downtown Boston." And I'm like, "Why do you know this?" And he's like, "Because it's not the first time somebody's called in to ask for a titty cake." And I'm like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, the point is, like, some of the best writing and the most fun writing, or at least the writing that's the most fun to do, is a little bit personal. So 100% I encourage this. Go ahead and dox yourself. No, don't dox yourself. But you get what I mean. Anyway. And I should get back to the Arcadia. There were so many different fun ideas. Like, there was the titty cake story, but also there was an actual recipe for magic brownies that I definitely did not steal from a book that I actually worked on at my first job. Um, so that's in the first chapter. Man, that was such a good time. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why I set that aside to work on an actual serious novel as my debut, but nonetheless, like, I should go back to that whenever I need catharsis. It was just so much fun. Cryptic says it's not the first time somebody is called in to ask for a titty cake. It's probably the funniest thing I've heard in a while. Yeah, I will say that was not a common occurrence. I think it happened 3 times in the history that that bakery had run. Um, but my coworker just so happened to have been picking up the phone during one of those calls. Cryptic says, I haven't lived in that state, let alone that safe for years, so shrug. Oh, it's even safer to do that. That's fine then. But anyway, it is 11:13. We should get to that last spree. So, one more time, my dudes. Deep breath in. Let it out. Deep breath in. Let out slowly. 20 minutes are on the clock. You know what to do. Best of luck, and I will see you on the other side for updates. Cryptic says you also could not pay me to go back. That is fair. I'm of two minds about going back to my hometown, but that is a different story altogether. Anyway, 20 minutes on the clock. Get ready, get set, and here we go. Alright, that is the last sprint of the night. How did we do? Oakleaf is totally a-okay. Welcome back. Okay. 1,187 words, which again is not that bad. So, moving right along, I should be able to finish this up by either tomorrow or the day after. So, excellent. Definitely going to try to finish the scene tonight. Cryptic says, honestly, just chilled for this one, to be honest. Also, welcome back. Totally valid. It is a-okay to just kind of hang out and chill. In any case, let's see. The usual schedule. Is there going to be a stream on the weekend, considering the fact that it is the a 3-day weekend for some of us? The answer is maybe question mark. Like I said, I would like to try to get a lot of stuff done this weekend. I want to finish up the Infinite Sadness, and I want to get started at drafting whatever Monday rolls around. We'll see if Monday is unfortunately going to be quote unquote raid night. It's usually the night whenever my static does stuff, so probably not Monday night. Monday afternoon is still on the table though, because that is a day off for me. So we'll see. Oakleaf says, got some rereading done after putting the kid into bed and carrying my aging dog up the stairs. That is a lot. So A+, especially the dog part. Get that doggo comfy. Excellent job. So let's see. I'm looking at the calendar right now. Wednesday is no-go. Thursday, probably not. Friday, probably, maybe not. We'll see. Just keep an eye on Blue Sky or hit that ring-a-ding bell to get notified if I go on stream again. If you're on Blue Sky, I will of course make a little announcement on my Blue Sky profile. Just turn on notifications on my profile and you might be able to see that, or you'll get 30,000 posts about bees again. It's kind of a crapshoot, but I'd say it's delight either way, because who can argue with bee facts, am I right? Anyway, guaranteed though, there will be a stream on September 2nd, and it is going to be the Nameless Song Extravaganza. We are going to hammer through that first chapter and see how far we get. It's going to be fun for the whole family. I hope you're there for it. Other than that, thank you again for coming to yet another stream. We had a lot of fun today talking about veganism and depression and all kinds of other stuff. Cryptic says, I hope we get a ton of bee facts. Somebody reminded me the bee fact thread exists, and I have more bee facts that I have learned since the last time around. I've already mentioned the whoop thing, but did you know that bee claws are called, all insects have this little pair of claws at the end of their little feet called tarsal claws, and they're the cutest things ever. But they're also how a bee is able to cling to walls and whatnot. That and bee feet are bee feet, like a lot of insect feet, are covered in hairs, and between those two things, they can climb walls and crawl across ceilings. There you go. But definitely go look up tarsal claws. They are the cutest little things ever. Especially if you have the entire... Okay, that's enough. I am not going to go off on entire bees, but they're God's cutest insects. They really are. Go find... You know what? Fuck it. Go find yourself a little close-up shot of a bee and just take a look at it clinging to things. It is just the cutest thing. Oakleaf says, I love bees. Everybody should love bees. They are, I get that nobody wants to be stung, but trust me, bees at least will not sting you unless you bother them, and they will usually warn you if you're bothering them. Oakley says, did you know that male carpenter bees are harmless and very gentle? Yes, like carpenter bees in general, I do believe. Like they're just there to chill out and burrow and make little nests in wood, and they just want to be kind of left alone. But yes, male bees in general, like even male drone bees, like drone honeybees, do not have stingers, so they can't actually defend themselves. But they have two purposes in life, and that is to eat and fuck. And it's so sad watching videos of bees getting evicted, or drone bees getting evicted, because every fall, uh, every autumn, in order to preserve honey storage for the winter, worker bees will literally kick out every male bee from the hive. And some of them will try to crawl back in, and it's sort of like, God, you are so cute and so helpless. You are like a tiny little bear lumbering up, like a tiny little panda bear wandering up to the hive, being like, why won't you let me back in? Uh, Bees are a blessing. Cryptic says bees are a blessing. Very true. Oakleaf says, I have alarmed more than a few people by going around with a male carpenter bee hanging out on my shirt. The females can and will bite you, but the males are chill dudes. See, I did not know that carpenter bees bite. I should have known that, because I know about carpenter ants, and those fuckers will bite the shit out of you. I know this from experience because in my childhood, my bedroom was right up against a lilac tree that was also a carpenter bee nest. So I got many six-legged friends, and that is why I don't respect ants as much as I respect bees. Um, Oakleaf says, oh, I've already read that. But yeah, anything with carpenter in the name. But for the most part, like, bees are kind of chill, and the females, at least, just want to be left alone. I'm not sure about the males, I guess. I guess the males are very friendly. I want to interact with the little male bees more often. Um, that might be what. That is not why. That is definitely not why Benjamin is a male bee. Benjamin is a worker bee. Benjamin just says trans rights. um, I don't know. I just looked at it. I just looked at Benjamin. I was like, you are A, male, and B, your name is Benjamin, and that is the origin story of Benjamin. Man, that went off the rails for a second there, but you know, you all got bee facts out of it, so excellent. Oakleaf gave you carpenter bee facts. I gave you other bee facts. But in any case, right, Tuesday, September 2nd, will be our next guaranteed day for streaming. That day I will be working on the Nameless song, so I hope you join me. There might be other streams between now and then. Keep an eye on Blue Sky or turn on notifications on YouTube to get notified. Oakleaf posted the trans flag in a bee, yes. Again, Benjamin says trans rights. But other than that, you know, thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for, I say that jokingly, but, you know, I love you guys. Thank you for chilling out with me this night and helping me be productive and enabling my bee-loving ways. I am looking forward to the next stream. But until then, regardless of whether we're meeting only in a few days or next week, I hope however much time between now and then is just filled with good hours and good vibes for y'all. Get plenty of rest, remember to hydrate or dihydrate, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you, love y'all, and good night.